There's a big contrast when it comes to automation. The big enterprise companies have been automating since decades. But then again, the remaining market, mid-caps, small and medium-sized businesses, but also enterprises with more variance in their production basically couldn't tap into automation just yet. At the same time, the labor that is needed to produce most of these products manually isn't there. So RobCo's purpose is exactly that, to automate the ordinary so humans can do the extraordinary in the manufacturing industry. Today, we sell most of our solutions in what we call a robot as a service subscription model, which is 5,000 euros a month, for example, $7,000 a month, less than the cost for a human worker in 2 shifts or 3 shifts, or sometimes even less than a human worker in a shift even. The reality is the German market is tough. There's no, let's try it out, let's see what's in it for me type of mentality, because if your solution doesn't work at 2 a.m. in the night shift, you're screwed. And so essentially you want humans do the orchestration of these processes, take care about quality.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Schmitt, partner at Lightspeed in Europe, and this is the Investment Memo, the show where we lift the curtain and invite our founders to give our audience a sneak peek into the generational businesses they are building. On today's episode, I'm joined by Roman Hölzl, CEO and co-founder of RobCo, the company building autonomous manufacturing agents. RobCo is obsessed by deploying robots at world-class speed, and this is based off their proprietary modular hardware and their AI-defined autonomy layer. Today, we'll be talking about what initially sparked RobCo, why AI is redefining manufacturing, and what it takes to scale a robotics business globally. I'm excited for this show. Welcome, Roman.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
You just raised your Series C, and while that's something to be really celebrated, we all know that you're very ambitious and that you don't stop here. And so we brought something here to you today, which is these pages that are laying in front of us. And that is not only our investment memo from the Series C, but it's also actually the investment memo from our Series B, because we're very happy that we're able not only to be working together for more than 2 years, but that we're doubling down now on this round again.
Looking forward to it. I mean, when do you get to see an investment memo as a founder? And that's super special, so let's do it.
I hope there are some surprises in here. Yeah. That's amazing. I want to set the context for us a little bit. The first part of our investment memo is always the inevitable truths, and that is basically the market in which you are building. It almost feels like a perfect storm for manufacturing. You have geopolitical challenges, you have macroeconomic shifts, you have massive labor shortages. All of that are the environment in which your customers, the manufacturers of today and tomorrow, are building.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest pet points those manufacturers experience day to day?
The biggest is by far, and we hear this from small to large, the biggest enterprise in the world up to tier 3 suppliers, is shortage of labor, because it requires manual work to do all of the manufacturing tasks that are required to build products. From milling to grinding to drawing to gluing to everything that's needed. And that's the biggest challenge. And so to our mind, the issue now isn't cutting costs, through automation. That's not the setup. The setup is, are these manufacturers actually able to produce with a lack of manual labor? So that's number one. Number two is definitely cost. We all want to consume more and more and more, but it can't cost more. That's just the way it is. And so that's a big factor. And number three is volatility. Batch sizes become smaller and smaller. The claim we all, hear many times of high mix, low volume is the standard now, as we all demand individualized, customized production and products. Those three are the biggest by far, to our mind.
You referenced labor shortage as one of the biggest challenges. There's up to 4 million unfulfilled jobs in manufacturing in the next decade. That sits in stark contrast to 90% of jobs in a manufacturing that today still aren't automated. For our viewers that are less familiar with the matter, help us understand, what does today's automation look like at manufacturers?
There's a big contrast when it comes to automation. So the big legacy robotics companies exist since 5 decades or more, especially in the automotive industry, in the pharmaceutical industries. The big enterprise companies have been automating since decades. They have internal teams, they have the financial means available to deploy automation. But then again, the remaining market, mid-caps, small and medium-sized businesses, but also enterprises with more variance in their production, basically couldn't tap into automation just yet. And so it's been both an ROI challenge commercially, but also technically. Technical feasibility is a big topic because many of these manufacturing processes for products that are very simple to use are very complex. And so automation essentially has to hit that standard to be able to automate even very complex tasks. And that's why 90% of manufacturing jobs today are still manual in many cases.
Listening to you excites me, not only because I fundamentally believe in the vision of RobCo, but also it makes my mind go back to the time that we met, which is almost a decade ago. Actually, not too far from here, just a couple of 100 meters at the Technical University of Munich, one of the most compelling universities for research at the intersection of AI and hardware. We both spent time in Boston. We both came back. I pursued an entrepreneurial career. You started an academic career, pursuing a PhD. Many researchers that we see and work with, they struggle to translate research, world-class research, into actual products.
Yeah.
When you were starting to think about RobCo and commercializing the research that you've done, when did you really think that the prototypes were for customers?
So I think in hindsight, we just went out, probably way too fast and realized how hard it is to get the solution actually up and running in an environment, manufacturing, that requires 24/7 uptime, very high precision, high repeatability. You can't afford any incidents. It was good and bad. It was bad because we were like, okay, we have still so much to go. But it was good because it really sharpened our mission and our culture of being very customer-centric, despite having a very technical product with loads of research and patents in the background.
I love that customer obsession. I think that's what makes the company very unique. When you compare that vision of RobCo back in the day to what it has evolved today, take us on that journey.
So we thought a modular system is the answer to everything because, a lot of manufacturing requires high mix and low volume production. And so we thought if we could offer a Lego-like solution to that high mix, low volume production setting, that'd be ideal, especially geared to small and medium-sized enterprises.
And by Lego-like system, you mean mostly your hardware that is proprietary and you can really puzzle together.
That's right. And so that's what you see. That's what you experience as a user. And so the evolution up until today has been dramatic. The product vision today is an autonomous manufacturing platform that is built on that hardware baseline, but especially, drives customer value because of the software and because of the AI. That core technology was always there, that digital twin, as we call it, to control and steer these hardware modules, but is today much more pronounced in terms of the actual output, in terms of deployment speeds, and in terms of actual customer uptake.
Besides the technical innovation, what also makes RobCo very unique is the approach which you go to market. And that is robot as a service.
Yes.
Also called RaaS. A lot of traditional robotic companies, they are focused on one-time sales, often with a lot of CapEx upfront. You deploy your robots with a subscription model where the costs of the agent, the robot, are directly comparable to a human. What does this business model enable you and how are your customers perceiving that?
The big challenge in robotics are cost, complexity, and long timelines. I mean, these projects cost a couple of €100,000 very quickly, take 6 months, 9 months or longer. The idea basically that we had was, let's leverage the technological backbone that we have, but also iterate and innovate on the business model. And so today we sell most of our solutions in what we call a robot as a service subscription model, which is €5,000 a month, for example, $7,000 a month, less than the cost for a human worker in 2 shifts or 3 shifts, sometimes even less than a human worker in a shift even. And so you change the economics completely because suddenly RobCo and the manufacturer share the risk and we share the upside as well. And so that only works because of the strong adaptability of the product. And it only works because we've built up an absolute world-class go-to-market and sales team to get that done, paired with a very strong operational deployment team after the actual sales process as well.
We've both been working together for more than 2 years now. We've visited countless customers. Might it be the precision parts manufacturer that's somewhere in rural Europe on the one side, and on the other side, the multinational company that sits in the heart of Silicon Valley. All of them highlight, obviously, your amazing hardware IP and your great AI-enabled platform. But what makes them all unique in sharing is your speed in deployment, your rapid path to real ROI and uptime. And a lot of that seems to be driven by everything that you've been building around the physical hardware itself.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about the evolution of the autonomous parts of RobCo and how that influences your deployment speed?
Yeah, for sure. So the offering at RobCo today is a full platform. And to what you mentioned, the baseline for all of that is a simulation-first approach. We go on site. We position RobCo as a automation partner to these customers. And so from large to small. And we go on site, we look at the potential use cases. Typically, our customers have some in mind, some we figure out while doing the shop floor walks. And then either there's a CAD model, a 3D model of that environment already in place, or we literally just scan the environment and then basically start from a digital simulation of that use case. We iterate on that basis very quickly. We look at things like cycle times, output, interfaces, connectivity, and then generate a concept that works for the worker on that shift, on that manufacturing task, but also for the CEO. And we pair it both with an analysis of technical feasibility and of commercial viability. And both of that is to this at this point vastly automated as well. And on that basis, we then sell and deploy. And so we basically cut sales and deployment times, in many cases by tenfold, in the average by at least threefold. And it also makes the system much more future-proof, because that then simulation-first deployment can be connected to the existing IT stack. And today, in many instances, we're connected deeply into the MES, ERP, and even data lakes of these customers. And so the robot becomes a physical extension to the IT stack, much more so than a complex, CapEx-intensive, expert, first type of automation equipment development.
So simulation-first approach with a holistic understanding of the whole manufacturing space and then a deep integration into the existing stack. What does that mean also for which tasks are now you're able to address that weren't possible with previous robotic solutions?
So first of all, we do the tasks, you might have seen robots do in the past, but with a caveat. And what we do is a lot of machine loading, unloading, materials handling, materials finishing, palletizing, depalletizing, these types of tasks, but with a caveat of a much more complexity in these tasks. And that could be because of a much higher degree of variance. So we have to handle, for example, in some instances, 20 different types of SKUs on the same robot, same application, same setup. But we have to make it possible for these 20 different SKUs. So very different than the high volume, low variance type of automation in the past. So that's number one. Number two is we do loads of integrated tasks where it's about handling something, but also about quality inspection or about, tracking and tracing a part and feeding that info back into the IT stack. And then number three, we typically don't have a fixture and a fixed setup out of which we automate, which has been, the case in the past. Typically, parts are unstructured, they might be in a bin, they might be unsorted. And so we do a lot of detect and localization of parts and then basically have the robot reason off of that information and then perform a task, that the user instructs it to do. And so it is truly a platform. There's a hardware component, there's a software component for the teaching, there's an AI component to get all that done very quickly. And there's a deep software integration component to feed all that information back into the existing IT stack. And that is absolutely unique. And we think we're the only ones out there who have that deep level of vertical integration.
Yeah, so that vertical integration in the end enables you to really productize each and every almost individual manufacturing task at hand in a rapid speed, and that makes you deploy your robots so quickly as well. A part of what you've also been touching on is humans are obviously part still of the future of manufacturing.
Yeah.
How do your autonomous agents collaborate with those humans in these environments?
I like this analogy of, a factory of the future being like a sports team. And so, essentially you want to move to a world where humans do the orchestration of these processes, take care about quality, levels. They set the whole, solution up such that it works for the end customer who's buying these products. But then the actual execution, the muscles, so to speak, of that sports team is handled by autonomous agents, by robots of different form factors, with different degrees of higher or less high autonomy with less or more deep integration in terms of the sensor stack. And so that's the kind of the vision we have for the factory of the future. And so today on that path, you already have in many instances humans being up-leveled in terms of the value chain, moving away from operating a machine into orchestrating 5 machines that are now automated, and they take care about the project setup, about the quality, about the tracking and tracing of these parts. This is readily happening. It's not happening in one instance. There's no ChatGPT moment for robotics yet. But
do you think you'll have that ChatGPT moment?
I think it's probably going to be an overnight success that takes 10 years, if that makes sense. So the big bottleneck today is the data for these autonomous deployments, both for specific use cases, but also embodiment-specific data. And unlike large language models, you just can't scrape the internet or books or Wikipedia or X for that type of data. You have to capture it. Very little data off the shelf available to do that. There's been horrific breakthroughs in terms of being able to use POV data that's on YouTube and then translating that into robot form factors, but that's still rather early. I think the only thing that's set in stone is the architecture for autonomous deployments is likely going to be end-to-end neural networks. But both on the data front and on the algorithm front, there's loads to be done still.
And that is why it matters so much that you're being deployed live in the field with everyday robotics today. And so I guess this is a great segue into the next section of our investment memo, which is about growth.
Yes.
There are a lot of robotics companies that define themselves purely by amazing and world-class research and IP. What makes RobCo so unique is your obsession with customers and really going live. When I look back at the very much original investment memo, we started working together with less than 100 robots that you had deployed over your lifetime. And that was already at the time amazing and great. Now we sit here and you've deployed more than 300 robots in a year. And that is exciting, and you're pushing, but we can see your eyes that you're looking forward to deploy even more. You're doing this, though, in a context where obviously manufacturing is experiencing a lot of challenges that we talked about earlier, macroeconomic shifts, geopolitical challenges. How are you working with these companies that are under such immense pressure and helping them to invest in automation?
So from our perspective, in especially the current challenging macroeconomic times, there's 2 things every manufacturer cares about. That is survival, obviously, and productivity. And so we've geared the whole offering that we have towards these 2 factors. And a big driver is our simulation-first approach to both sales and deployments, and then also the robot as a service business model, which is by far the dominating business model that we have, because we share the risk with our customers. There's not going to be an extensive upfront CapEx investment with a payback or deployment happening quarters and quarters after that initial investment. And frankly, we're then in the same boat with these manufacturers and become kind of an outsourced automation partner. And so that's the way we tackle the current challenging macroeconomic times with manufacturers.
You're really value aligned in the end of the day with your customers through that. And you've also been incredible capital efficient in this growth. In the early days, I remember how scrappy but still impressive the business was. Still today, it very much is. Is that also parts to the explosive growth that you've been experiencing, or how are you navigating your company to be so capital efficient?
I think there's a business answer and a personal answer. The personal answer is, and you know that really well, I kind of grew up, so to speak, with B2B SaaS founders, in our environment. And so when we talked about this personally, it was always about high gross margins, really fast sales process, typically with a pretty fast deployment right after. You could kind of benchmark, growth rates and capital efficiency. And so we never really looked at robotics or as capital efficient manufacturing businesses as benchmarks, but at very lean B2B SaaS businesses. And so I think that's number one. Number two, we focus very much on fast sales and deployment. And so the whole cash conversion cycle is extremely fast. In many cases, we have negative working capital because we pre-finance robot as a service deployments with the actual sale. And so the costs we have for materials, inventory, commission are offset by cash flows that happen right after the actual closing. And then number three, the ROI of these cases has to be very high. It's an operational buyer. They're not going to buy if there's no clear ROI. And so that also means that both from the customer perspective, but also from our perspective, we have to be very cautious to achieve high gross margins and high contribution margins. And that, of course, then ultimately leads to much lesser burn than you would expect.
I'm looking forward to talk about your gross margins in the Series D investment memo session that we hopefully have here soon too. Yeah. Looking forward to the team, which is another part of our investment memo. You started the business here out of Munich, coming out of the Technical University of Munich, having met your co-founders in your PhD, building in the south of Germany with a massive industrial base of manufacturing. What impact do you think has the German market had on you as a team and the business in the early days?
The reality is the German market is tough. It is a market that's used to very high quality, a very dense manufacturing network of suppliers, customers, the whole industry. I think every seventh person in Germany is directly or indirectly working for manufacturing, automotive, chemicals, and others. And so it's a market that demands very high product quality and very strong service, even in the early days. There's no, let's try it out, let's see what's in it for me type of mentality, because if your solution doesn't work at 2 a.m. in the night shift, you're screwed. That basically prompted a couple of things. So it prompted that we kept kind of this move fast and break things type of mentality. But before a solution really then goes out and hits the ground running, the shop floor running, it has to be high quality, high robustness, and with a strong servicing background. And so that ultimately prompted, kind of thinking that we wouldn't otherwise have had. So for example, one big component of what we call RobCo Studio, our central orchestration platform, is remote access and remote servicing. We can look at every solution from afar if our customers allow us to do that. We can look into performance stats, into uptime, into challenges if they occur. And so suddenly, in terms of economics, servicing becomes much, much simpler. At the same time, you lay the foundation for a more autonomous future because you already start with a strong data and software backbone from the get-go and don't have to kind of, work your way through that afterwards. And so a lot of that basically laid the foundation of the current product solution and product offering that we have.
I love that initial hardship in starting the business and how challenging it was and what that enables you to do globally now. I think the fact that with this business built out of Germany, you have a really claim to make the label Made in Germany like a very successful once more again, and not only for cars, but for world-class robotics too.
Yeah, I had even darker patches below my eyes than today after the overnight flight from the States in these first 18 months building RobCo.
Let's switch gears and let's talk about fundraising. What the audience probably doesn't know is we initially passed on your Series A. And
Expensive mistake.
Did an expensive mistake. But hopefully we did it in a manner where you felt still appreciated and felt some of our question marks were valid. Yeah. And I'm looking at the memo here and I'm seeing the two core concerns were that you should prove how RaaS can actually scale in an environment where your customers were used to one-time expenses. Yeah. And the second was showcasing a clear differentiation beyond the hardware modularity. I think on the second one, we talked a lot already about. And so you've clearly proven us wrong on those concerns. And that is also why we ultimately doubled down and preempted your Series B 2 years ago and are now leading again another round into the business. And you're today announcing a $100 million round of your Series C. How important is this capital stack that you've assembled for you, and what does it enable you to do?
We need speed and global ambition in building a category-defining company. We also need patience because it's a complex business. There's a bunch of topics around supply chain, deployment, servicing, real-time capabilities, certification that you just have to, get done. And that takes a bunch of time. We're super grateful for you and all your partners for the trust and the, I guess now, proper double down in first the Series B that was preemptive and now the Series C, because we believe it's the exact right setup for RobCo to become the best version it can be and truly dominate the category that we've set out to dominate in the US and Europe. And so we're super helpful that it did work out from Series B.
And we're super thankful too. $100 million is a lot of money still in AI world. And you've talked about how incredible efficient you are with the business. So walk us through how are you gonna use that money now in the next phase of growth for RobCo?
Yeah. So there's three main categories. Number one is the enterprise and major client expansion that we've driven since roughly 6 quarters now. So we've won dozens of the global Fortune 1000 companies already, but we're still at the very early days with the expansion potential within these accounts. And that holds true both in Europe and in the US. And that's the second big point, is the US expansion. I'm personally also going to move this year to the Bay Area, and we'll grow faster in the US versus Europe, both in terms of team buildup, but also in terms of top line. And so we're looking to build the company out to roughly a 50-50 level within the next 4 to 6 quarters. And then the third and, arguably most ambitious part of that race, and in terms of funds to be used, is our autonomy roadmap. So we have very ambitious goals when it comes to that. We call it RobCo Autonomy. We haven't shared a lot about that publicly for good reason, but we're very deep in both sales but also deployments with big major customers, and can't really share a lot about that publicly, but we will over the next weeks and months. And it's going to be super exciting to double down on these 3 big topics over the next years.
Thanks for sharing that. I want to double click on the second point that you've mentioned, which is the geographic expansion into America. I recently saw your billboards in San Francisco go up that claim automate the ordinary so humans can do the extraordinary. And I think our viewers can really relate to that, given everything that you've shared. Maybe you can take us a little bit on the journey on how do you want to tackle the US market? What are some of the things that you've learned from the European market, now exploring more the opportunities in the US?
So RobCo's purpose is exactly that, to automate the ordinary so humans can do the extraordinary in the manufacturing industry. And so a couple of thoughts about the US market. So if you want to be really fast, the easiest way is to double down on customers who already serve in Europe, and then make the move across the Atlantic and automate processes, use cases, factories within these same customers, but in the US. And that's worked like a charm for us last year already. So that's a big one. The second one is we have a very clear cluster, both in terms of geographies, use cases, and industry types they want to tackle. Those are the ones that have worked well here and have worked well in the US already last year with the acquisition that we've made roughly 1.5 years, or 1 year and 2 months ago, I guess. And then the third point is the actual go-to-market model. So what's unique about RobCo is that our go-to-market model is a direct sales approach that's driven by playbooks, repeatable, high ROI playbooks. And the industry is very much depending on middlemen, integrators, resellers, distributors that either take on the responsibility for the actual sales process, or for the implementation, or for the servicing. And so it's very much kind of a complex process between different parties. We bundle all that into a repeatable, high ROI type of process, and we have the sales team and the product team to back that up. And so that'll be the core way for us to do it in the States. And we're doing that already now, like we're doing it in Europe as well.
I think it's very exciting is that you bring kind of your world-class engineering capabilities to a massive market. And I think you've already succeeded without massive marketing splashes. And so I'm even more excited to see what can really happen once we tackle this with more dedication, and you also moving to the US. What are your initial thoughts of having spent a bit of time in the US now, between the dynamics of the European ecosystem and the American ecosystem?
You have to be excited. I am certainly about the speed, the ambition of building category-defining companies in the US, about the strong focus on world-class distribution. And so I think that paired with the ecosystem there, both in terms of the capital markets, but also founders, talent, is extremely exciting. At the same time, we have a world-class engineering team here in Munich that goes very deep technically, is very loyal. Many of these folks are with us since before we founded the company, because they did their master's thesis, for example, with us. And so I think that combination is going to be amazing, having an engineering powerhouse that's global, but that has kind of a European DNA, let's call it, and then the US ambition to truly dominating the category, winning a market, being fast, being scrappy, focusing on distribution, and that's the kind of the two words that will combine.
Shifting our focus a little bit to the future of robotics. And here I'm talking to you as one of the most exciting founders building in this space with everyday robotics today already. If we look at it, this year, roughly 525,000 robots have been deployed. That is already double than what it was a decade ago. If we look towards 2030, we're most likely going to surpass the 700,000 robots being deployed on an annual basis.
Yeah.
What does robotics look like in 2030?
The short answer is it's going to be much more autonomous. We think it'll move away from CapEx heavy to be deployed industrial machines into autonomous agents. And we want to spearhead that revolution as RobCo. And so our claim is at least one RobCo in every factory that is truly autonomous, that takes on these massive labor shortages. That is, the key ingredient to produce and manufacture locally again in the West, and that can be deployed in a matter of days with instant ROI. And so really excited to double down on that vision.
I love your claim for one RobCo in a factory. I think after that, almost nothing can come. So thank you very much for having us, Roman. This was a really exciting episode. And I hope we were able to kind of give a sneak peek behind the inner workings of RobCo and the exciting business that you're building here.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming by, and thanks for the nice gift.